When we think about the arrival of our immigrant ancestors to the U.S., we tend to visualize what it must have been like to arrive in the port of New York, get their first sighting of the Statue of Liberty, and ferry over to Ellis Island for processing. But guess what? Not all immigrants to the U.S. came through New York's Ellis Island. There are many other ports that were used by arriving immigrants, and their means of transportation wasn't limited to ships. Here are the 6 most popular ports of entry to the U.S. between 1880 and 1920, and a couple of other methods used by new arrivals to come to the U.S. The most popular port of entry was New York City. Over 24 million immigrants arrived in New York City between 1880 and 1920. Where did they arrive? Well, it depends when they arrived. From August 1st, 1855 through April 18th, 1900, immigrants arrived at the Castle Garden Immigrant Landing Depot. Then, between April 19, 1890 and December 31, 1891, the barge office was used as a temporary location. And finally, beginning January 1, 1892, Ellis Island was completed and started operations. But of course, it's not that simple. A fire destroyed the original Ellis Island buildings, which were all made of wood. From the period June 16, 1897 through mid-December 1900, the old barge office was once again used to process immigrants. You can search for New York City arrival records from the Castle Garden period using the Battery Conservancy website or Steve Morse's One Step website. And of course, you can access records from the Ellis Island periods from the Ellis Island Foundation website or again using Steve Morse's One Step search page. Due to the fire, there will be gaps for some of the records from the Castle Garden and barge office periods and the first 6 years of Ellis Island. After New York, the 5 most popular ports of entry between 1820 and 1920 were Boston, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New Orleans, and San Francisco. Indexes and scans of the actual manifests exist in varying quality and completeness. There are some excellent sources for finding passenger manifests and indexes for non-New York arrivals. A few worth reviewing include Family Search's listing of United States Immigration Online Genealogy records, the German Roots Emigration and Immigration Records and Resources, and the National Archives holdings. And of course, as mentioned with the New York records, you can visit Steve Morse's One Step page to do searches for a number of the most popular non-New York ports. But not everyone came to the U.S. by way of the Atlantic or Pacific Oceans. Another route to the United States was to first arrive in Canada and then cross the border into the U.S. Canadian entry could be accomplished by land or sea. The most popular seaports were Quebec and Montreal in the summer, and St. John and Halifax in the winter. Border crossings existed in a number of locations. The most popular is probably St. Albans, Vermont. And so your first ancestors may not have sailed into the United States, but just stepped on the gas and crossed by car. Information on Canadian crossing records can be found on most of the non-New York immigration sites already mentioned. For more information on Canadian crossings, take a look at Miriam Smith's Fall 2000 article in the National Archives Prologue magazine titled By Way of Canada. Finally, there are other interesting cases of immigrant arrivals. One such example was known as the Galveston Plan. The organizers of the plan were concerned that concentrated areas of European Jews were immigrating to the U.S. only to create concentrated area of Jewish settlement in New York and the East Coast. Their plan was to assist immigrants to arrive in the U.S. and find them employment in the Midwest. Between 1907 and 1914, more than 10,000 immigrants came to the U.S. through Galveston, Texas. Some stayed in the Texas area, while others moved inland towards the West Coast, along the Missouri River up to Omaha, Nebraska, or as far north as Fargo, North Dakota. For a number of reasons, the plan proved unpopular, and Galveston was no longer used for European Jewish immigration. The records for the Galveston Plan are located at the American Jewish Historical Society. You can search for the arrival records through the Galveston Historical Foundation site and through Ancestry.com. So, what have we learned? Just because your ancestors were part of the Great Migration to the U.S. doesn't necessarily mean they came through Ellis Island. Even if your relatives ended up in New York City, that doesn't mean they entered the country there through the Port of New York. So, whether they arrived by ship, by train, by car, by plane, or by foot, consider all the possibilities when doing your research. This has been another helpful video from the Jewish Genealogy Society of Long Island. Please visit our website at www.jgsli.org for more information on our monthly speakers, beginners workshop, and other projects and resources. And visit our Facebook page where you can take part in conversations with experienced researchers. Whether you're on Long Island or an out-of-towner, we'd love to hear from you. Good luck with your research.